Before her mother passed away, she had warned Chloe that no matter who betrayed her, she must never be soft-hearted. She had to disappear from their lives completely. Therefore, when Carter hid the fact that he had gotten Sarah pregnant, Chloe didn't cry or make a scene. Instead, she sought out his sworn enemy, Julian Sterling. "I'm getting married on the 10th of next month. I need you to crash the wedding and take me away," she told him. "Everyone knows Carter loves you to the bone and treats you like his own life. Eloping with me? Do you want him to drop dead right at the wedding?" Julian replied. "He loves me and treats me like his life, yet he still hid the fact that he has someone else on the side?" She retorted. "Just tell me if you'll do it or not." "What's in it for me?" he asked. "I heard old Mrs. Sterling's health hasn't been great, and she's been rushing you to settle down," Chloe pointed out. "Crashing my wedding and taking me away will let you slap Carter's family in the face while giving you someone to bring home to your own family. It kills two birds with one stone." The man sitting across from her chuckled softly. After a moment, he slowly spoke up. "Deal." "Hi, everyone. Today we're watching a thrilling wedding day escape. When our female lead discovers her groom secretly got another woman pregnant, she doesn't cry. Armed with sharp clarity and self-respect, she chooses the ultimate comeback to protect her own worth. Let's get right into it." That night, when Carter tried to be intimate, Chloe rejected him and suggested they call off the wedding. Hearing this, he immediately panicked. "Did I do something wrong to upset you? Chloe, you can hit me, you can scold me, whatever you want, but please don't talk about calling off the wedding. You know I've been dreaming of marrying you for 15 years. "Don't get so worked up. I was just joking," she said. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. "Chloe, don't make jokes like that in the future. It'll kill me." Back when Carter had learned the truth, she had nearly died as well. Now, if they both died once, it would finally be fair. Perhaps her suggestion to cancel the wedding had thrown him into a complete state of panic. During this time, Carter stopped going to work, following her around day after day, barely leaving her side. That was until the pre-wedding party the day before the ceremony. Their mutual friends had organized a bachelor and bachelorette bash for them. Chloe happened to be at the start of her menstrual cycle. Cold sweat broke out all over her, and she felt a severe pain in her lower abdomen. Seeing that she was unwell, Carter looked at her with eyes full of heartache and tried to take her home to rest. However, his group of buddies surrounded them. "Carter, we came here specifically for you. Leaving now is a real buzzkill," one complained. No matter how Carter tried to explain, he couldn't sway the drunk guys. Forced to compromise, Chloe took a step back and returned to the sofa. Carter hurriedly called Assistant Davis, instructing him to bring a heavy coat, heating pads, and some brown sugar ginger tea. Half an hour later, the person who pushed the door open to the private room was actually Sarah. Upon seeing her, Carter instantly grew anxious and frowned. "Why is it you?" "Assistant Davis had something come up, so he asked me to bring these over," Sarah replied. Carter intended for her to drop the items off and leave, but his friends stubbornly pulled her in to play games. Worried about Chloe being unwell on her own, he had no choice but to let Sarah stay and help look after her. As soon as the games began, Carter won the very first round. He drew a card and read it aloud to the group. The winner of the first round can designate a person of the opposite sex in the room to take a penalty drink. The crowd immediately erupted into cheers as a waiter brought over the penalty drinks. However, there were only two women present, Chloe and Sarah. Everyone knew Chloe was on her period. Moreover, since Carter loved her so much, there was no way he would let her drink such strong liquor. Consequently, all eyes turned to Sarah, who was putting on a show of looking flustered and anxious. "Let's change it to something else," Carter said. "Just consider it a rule violation on my part. You guys can take your pick from any of the sports cars in my garage." While the offer of a sports car was tempting, his unusually hesitant attitude only made the wealthy playboys even more intrigued. Sensing that something was off, they insisted, "No way, you have to choose one of them." Under everyone's watchful eyes, Carter hesitated for a long time before finally saying the name. "I choose to penalize Chloe." This unexpected choice caused the entire room to erupt in an uproar. Everyone revealed expressions of sheer shock and surprise. Chloe was in so much pain that all the color had drained from her face. Hearing his choice, she raised her head and gave him a deep, piercing look. Carter was just about to stand up and explain, but Chloe had already taken the glass of liquor from the waiter. With a cold laugh, she tilted her head back. Just as the freezing liquid touched her lips, a hand suddenly reached out from beside her and snatched the glass away. This sudden turn of events shocked everyone. They all turned to look, only to realize that Julian Sterling had walked in at some point without anyone noticing. Holding the strong liquor, he downed it in one gulp. Then, he turned the empty glass upside down to show the crowd, finally looking at Carter with a teasing smirk. "Sorry, I just happened to be thirsty." "It seems I've ruined Carter's good time," Julian said lightly. "But being able to take a drink for a beauty is my honor." The two men had never gotten along. Whenever they crossed paths, they would exchange sarcastic and mocking remarks. Seeing Julian had already annoyed Carter, but hearing him refer to Chloe made his expression turn even colder. "What happens between me and Chloe is none of an outsider's business," Carter retorted sharply. "After tomorrow, she will be my wife. I advise you to stay away from her." "Your wife, as of tomorrow," Julian softly repeated those words, an enigmatic smile forming at the corners of his mouth. No one understood what he was smiling about, but Chloe was the only one who knew. By the time they returned home, it was already 2 a.m. Seeing that Chloe still looked terribly pale, Carter hurriedly tried to explain. "Chloe, Sarah is pregnant and can't drink. That's why Chloe clearly knew everything, but she still had to play along with his act. "When did Sarah get married? Who is the baby's father?" she asked calmly. Carter remained silent for a long time before finally uttering, "I don't know." Chloe couldn't help but let out a soft chuckle. The ambiguous laugh made Carter, who was already dealing with a guilty conscience, even more panicked. He hastily changed the subject. "Chloe, we're getting married in just a few hours. Let's get some rest early." "I'm a little nervous and can't sleep. I have to move out tomorrow anyway, so why don't you help me pack?" Chloe suggested. Carter would indulge her in anything, so the two of them ended up staying awake all night. All the photos they had taken since they got together, the gifts they had given each other, over 2 decades of memories were all laid out. Every time he found something, Carter would reminisce about the past, his eyes filled with laughter. "Chloe, you knitted this scarf for me with your own hands. I couldn't bear to wear it even once. Look, it's still as good as new," he said. "And this notebook is the diary I wrote in high school. You cried so hard when you read it back then. Do you remember? Oh, and I still kept these plane tickets. We visited 3 countries in 2 days back then, and you were so exhausted you couldn't even keep your eyes open." He sighed with enthusiasm, completely failing to notice that his girl sitting opposite him hadn't smiled even once the entire night. Together, they packed up dozens of boxes, filling the living room. When morning came, tradition dictated that the bride and groom shouldn't see each other before the ceremony, so Carter had to return to his family's estate first. Before leaving, he hugged her affectionately, reluctant to let go. "I can't bear to be apart from you. Thankfully, in just a few hours, I'll be bringing you home as my wife," he whispered. "Chloe, promise me you'll never leave me in this life, otherwise I'll die." Chloe let him hold her without saying a single word. She couldn't promise him that, because today was the day they would part forever. Once his sports car drove out of the villa's gates, the butler stepped forward and asked, "How should we dispose of all these things?" Without even looking up, Chloe headed straight for the stairs. "Burn them all." The wedding, which had been planned for nearly 3 months, officially began amidst the deafening sound of fireworks filling the sky. Under the watchful eyes of the guests, her father led her as she slowly walked down the aisle. Carter watched her walking toward him, his eyes brimming with love. The thought that the dream he had longed for all these years was finally coming true made his heart feel like it was going to leap right out of his chest. He reached out and gently took her hand from her father's. Listening to the officiant's vows in front of all their friends and family, he felt as though he were floating on air. He eagerly and breathlessly blurted out, "I do." The officiant then turned and continued to read the next set of vows. "Miss Evans, do you take Mr. Carter to be your husband? To love him and be faithful to him? For richer or for poorer, in youth and in old age, to stay by his side for the rest of your life until your hair turns gray?" It was supposed to be Chloe's turn to say "I do," but the words never came as expected. Everyone turned their curious gazes toward her. For some reason, Carter's heart gave a violent thump. He hastily looked up at her, only to find her gaze fixed straight at the door. He followed her line of sight, but only saw a patch of darkness. Seeing that the situation was about to spiral out of control, the officiant coughed lightly and repeated the vows, to love him and be faithful to him. Just as he was halfway through, the heavy main doors were pushed open from the outside. The moment the doors opened, Chloe's voice echoed through the microphone across the entire hall. "I do not, because there's someone else I want to marry." Under Carter's horrified gaze, Chloe threw away the wedding bouquet in her hands, and without a moment of hesitation, ran toward the man who had promised to crash the wedding. She had waited for this moment for a very long time. Julian Sterling, having finally claimed the bride for himself, successfully made his escape. After a moment of dead silence, the entire hall exploded like a pot of boiling oil splashed with water. It wasn't until her figure had completely disappeared from sight that Carter, still standing frozen in place, finally snapped back to reality. Clenching the wedding ring tightly in his hand, he ran outside like a madman to chase after her. As he reached the top of the tall steps, a convertible sports car just happened to speed by. From inside, Chloe's joyful, hearty laughter rang out. "Carter, the person you should be marrying is the mother of your child. I'm not playing along anymore." Hearing those words, the color drained from Carter's face, turning from red to a deathly pale. His eyes were entirely swallowed by fear. Chloe's father, who had followed closely behind with a dark expression, stormed up to him. He grabbed Carter by the collar and furiously demanded, "What did Chloe just say? You have a child." Meanwhile, in a hidden corner, a pale-faced woman fainted on the spot. The sports car sped through the crowded, bustling streets before darting into a small alley. Chloe was still immersed in the euphoria of her successful escape. "Thank you," she said. "Don't mention it," came the reply. The car eventually came to a halt in a plaza. Tyler, who was sitting in the driver's seat, excitedly turned around and held out a hand toward Julian. "Mr. Sterling, the mission you assigned has been flawlessly completed. Requesting payment for my services." Julian took out a set of car keys and tossed them to him. "Get out of here." Tyler grinned from ear to ear, hopping out of the car like a monkey. Even after running a fair distance away, he turned back and waved. "Got it, got it. I won't interrupt the boss's main business. Happy wedding, boss and sister-in-law." The title sister-in-law successfully pulled Chloe's soaring mind back to reality. She lifted her dress and stepped out of the car, narrowing her eyes. "What's sister-in-law? We're not even married yet." Julian held her hand with his left hand, and with his right he pointed toward a high-rise building in the distance. "We will be soon." She followed his gaze, and the words City Hall came into her view. "Get married right now?" she asked. "Of course," he replied. "Isn't this a bit too rushed?" she murmured. Seeing the uncertainty in her eyes, Julian bent down to meet her gaze levelly. "I'm afraid that if we delay this any longer, Miss Evans might find someone else to pull another runaway bride stunt. Then wouldn't I lose both the girl and my investment? All that effort for nothing." "I'm not someone who breaks her promises," Chloe retorted. Julian nodded without arguing and pulled her along. When she still seemed a bit hesitant, Julian turned back to her. "Carter is an absolute madman. If we don't get the marriage registered today, who knows, he might bring his men to break into my house tonight and kidnap you. Then wouldn't all our efforts be in vain?" If he were talking about anyone else, she might have doubted it, but given Carter's personality, he really was capable of doing such a thing. As soon as he said those words, the hesitation and anxiety in her heart instantly vanished. She grabbed Julian's hand and made a mad dash straight for City Hall. It wasn't until they stepped into the lobby that she remembered a very important detail. "We came here empty-handed to get married? Didn't we prepare anything?" In response, Julian reached into his pocket and pulled out the documents he had already prepared in advance. He handed them to her. Looking at the items that had suddenly appeared in her hands, Chloe's eyes widened. "Where did you get my ID and ID photos?" she asked. "Vivian," Julian replied. "I told her you wanted me to crash the wedding. She didn't want to see you jump into the fiery pit of Carter's family either, so she agreed to help me." So it was Vivian. Chloe recalled how, before she left, Vivian had insisted on holding her bag for her. It turned out it was to get her documents. She finally understood what had happened. The two of them, dressed in a suit and a wedding gown, stood out conspicuously among the crowd of couples registering for marriage. The staff members nearby were whispering among themselves. Julian's hearing was excellent. After listening for a moment, he couldn't help but laugh. Clueless, Chloe looked at him in surprise. "What are you laughing at?" He leaned down and whispered in her ear, "They're comparing you to the runaway bride in the news." She felt momentarily embarrassed. Seeing her flushed ears, Julian couldn't suppress the smile on his lips. "Miss Evans, if you feel awkward, I can lend you a hiding place to lay low," he teased. "If they want to look, let them look. Why should I hide?" she replied. "It's just running away from a wedding. It's a normal thing. What's there to be afraid of?" After filling out the registration forms and passing the review, the two of them went to the photography area to take their registration photos. Being her first time getting married, and to Julian Sterling no less, she felt a bit stiff and unnatural. Julian adjusted her wind-tousled hair. Then he took a dazzling, sparkling diamond necklace from his pocket and carefully fastened it around her neck. Chloe recognized it immediately. It was the necklace that had recently sold at auction for $2 billion. Did you buy this necklace? She asked. Yes and no. To be exact, it's a meeting gift from my grandmother to her future granddaughter-in-law, he said. She also asked me to pass a message to you, Miss Evans. What message? She said, thank you, Miss Evans, for agreeing to take in this lawless demon, Julian. This old woman is extremely grateful. After completing the paperwork, Julian took her straight to the Sterling family estate. To his surprise, the gates of the estate were currently blocked by a crowd of people. Carter had brought his family's men and his group of shady friends to block the entrance, forcing their car to stop. Julian rolled down the window, his tone flippant and nonchalant. Oh, if it isn't old Mrs. Carter and Mr. Carter. What brings you to my humble abode? Seeing him still playing dumb, Carter seethed with anger, gritting his teeth. Julian, hand Chloe over, otherwise I won't let you off. Mr. Carter, haven't we always been at odds? When have we ever let each other off? Julian scoffed. Whatever you want to do, feel free to make your move. I'm always ready. As for Chloe, she is now Mrs. Sterling. I advise you to stay away from her. Mrs. Sterling? What Mrs. Sterling? She's clearly my fiancée. When did she become your wife? Carter yelled. Julian, you crashed a wedding once, and now you've started daydreaming. Julian pulled out their marriage certificate, flipped to the page with their photo, and held it out the window for everyone to see. Mr. Carter, don't slander me. Chloe and I are legally husband and wife. Since everyone is here, why don't you all admire this wedding photo that we're both very happy with? It's fresh off the press. Hearing this, everyone gathered around to take a closer look. After repeatedly confirming it, the voices of the lackeys beside Carter trembled. Boss, this marriage certificate seems to be real. Carter's face instantly turned deathly pale. He lunged forward, snatched the marriage certificate, and tore it to shreds. Watching the shredded pieces of paper flutter in the wind, Julian put on a look of pity. He tilted his head and asked, Wife, he tore up our marriage certificate. What should we do now? There should be 2 copies, right? Julian acted as if he had just realized this, laughed, and then pulled out another brand new marriage certificate, flaunting it inside the car. This time, I'm sure everyone believes Chloe and I are husband and wife. What right do you outsiders have to interfere in the affairs between us? This revelation was a shock to Carter, even greater than her running away. His eyes peered into the car through the gap, and he couldn't hold back his questioning, his voice cracking. Chloe, you've been planning this escape for a long time, haven't you? Yes, I planned it long ago, she replied. It was right around the time you took the mother of your child for her prenatal checkup. Julian and I had already met to discuss him crashing the wedding. After we finished talking, you even drove over to pick her up. She left a coat behind that day. Do you remember now? That was over 2 months ago. It turned out she had wanted to leave him for that long. This news was like a sharp blade piercing straight through Carter's chest. The agonizing pain from his heart made him almost unable to stand steady. Why? Why did you treat me like this? Why didn't you say anything to me? And you, why did you treat me like that? Chloe shot back. Did you think that just because I was abroad, I wouldn't know anything? Did you really have to flaunt Sarah in front of my face so openly? Do you think I'm that easy to fool? If you care about her that much, if you like her that much, you should have just told me directly and broken up with me. Why keep one foot in 2 boats? You cheated first, and the baby is already 5 months along. So what if I ran away from the wedding? What right do you have to question me? Carter never expected that the secret he had been hiding for so long was something she had known all along. No, Chloe, listen to me explain, he stammered. I didn't know she was pregnant. It was only discovered during the company's health checkup. My grandmother found out first, and she wanted to keep the baby. Even now, he still wanted to shift all the blame onto others. Chloe was completely disappointed in him. Right, it's all everyone else's fault, she said sarcastically. The 3 projects suspended by Mr. Carter, the 13 people fired from the planning department, the $300 million star ruby at the auction, the umbrella tilted toward her in the rain, and handing me the penalty drink. Did none of that have anything to do with you? Carter couldn't say another word. He stood frozen in place. Seeing her grandson in such a state, old Mrs. Carter felt extremely heartbroken. She stepped forward to defend him. Chloe, you know very well how Carter has treated you all these years. 2 years ago, he said he wanted to marry you, but you rejected him time and time again, just because of your dancing. He wanted to propose to you, and you left him to go abroad. He got drunk and had a child with Sarah. What right do you have to blame him? He has been carrying this guilt for so long, not even acknowledging his own flesh and blood, just because he was afraid you'd ask for a breakup. He loves you passionately, Yet you ran away right at the wedding ceremony, making our family lose all face. Don't you feel ashamed? Chloe was only 21 years old 2 years ago. She was entirely focused on pursuing her dreams and didn't want to get married so early. What's wrong with that? Julian interjected. The Evans family is also a prominent family in Jingbei. Marrying into your Carter family wouldn't be considered climbing the social ladder. So what if she rejected his proposals a few times? Carter couldn't control his own lower half. Can you blame that on Chloe too? Did she pour all that liquor down your grandson's throat? He already had a child, but still proposed to Chloe. Isn't this marriage fraud? A wedding full of calculation and deceit. She ran away, and so be it. What can you do about it? His words made old Mrs. Carter so angry her face turned rigid. She raised her hand, pointed at Julian's nose, and stammered, You, for a long time, but ultimately couldn't find a single word to retort. Julian let out a cold laugh. With a dark expression, he glanced at the grandmother and grandson, closed the car window, and stepped hard on the gas pedal. After the car drove into the villa, the iron gates clanged shut. Julian tossed the keys to the butler, instructing him to have someone clean up the mess at the front gate. Then, he opened the passenger side door and led Chloe straight into the house. The interior of the villa was incredibly quiet, seeming as though no one was around. Chloe felt a bit surprised. Where is your grandmother? She asked. Julian pulled her down to sit beside him. She went to pick up a few important guests. She'll be back in a little while. Guests? What guests? Isn't old Mrs. Sterling's health very poor? Why would she go out? Chloe wondered. Although she harbored doubts in her heart, it wasn't her place to ask further. Julian took a lap around the kitchen. A moment later, he returned and pulled her over to sit at the dining table. Looking at the spread of pastries and cakes, Chloe's mouth practically watered. However, with a dance performance coming up not too long from now, she could only stare at the delicious food and swallow her cravings. Julian picked up a piece of cake and placed it on the plate in front of her. I had a nutritionist make these cakes. The calories aren't very high, and the sweetness is just right. You've been exhausted all day. Eat a little to line your stomach. If you really gain weight, I'll work out and lose weight with you, okay? After hesitating for a moment, unable to fight the sheer instinct of hunger, Chloe used a spoon to scoop up a small bite to taste. It was truly delicious. Seeing her finally smile again, the heavy boulder that had been hanging in Julian's heart was finally set down. Before she knew it, the food on her plate was almost gone. She immediately stood up, declaring that she needed to go exercise. Seeing her being so strict with herself, Julian didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he accompanied her out to the backyard for a walk. The two of them strolled slowly. Looking at the evening shadows deepening across the sky, Chloe suddenly asked him, "Did you know about Carter and Sarah?" "He and I are sworn enemies," Julian replied. "How could I not know about such a secret weakness?" Thinking back to how the two men would always hit each other right where it hurt whenever they met, Chloe found his answer reasonable. "So, since when did you know?" "The very day it happened. The hotel they stayed at just happens to belong to a friend of mine. I knew about it that same night. Later, I had someone keep an eye on Sarah. When they found out she went to buy a pregnancy test, I figured she was probably pregnant." A look of surprise appeared on Chloe's face. "That early?" "What are you thinking about?" Julian asked. "Do you think I'm disloyal for not telling you about this earlier? Our relationship was pretty ordinary back then. It's only normal that you wouldn't tell me," she replied. "I was just thinking, what kind of role does Sarah actually play in all of this?" Hearing her curious tone, Julian assumed she still cared about those things. A wave of irritation flared up in his chest, and his tone wasn't very pleasant when he spoke. "She has some moral boundaries, but not many. Although that night was Carter's fault, she's a grown adult sleeping with a man. Furthermore, she clearly knew she was pregnant, yet she went along with the company's health checkup, making a huge scene out of it. It seems she isn't entirely innocent either. When the Carter family wanted to use money in exchange for the baby, she agreed to that too. After all, it is her own flesh and blood. Doing that is a bit too greedy for profit. Not to mention, she clearly knew about your existence, yet she still remained entangled with Carter in an ambiguous way. You can only evaluate her by saying, if she isn't stupid, then she's malicious." Thanks to Julian pointing it out, Chloe felt as if she had been enlightened. Before this, because Sarah always acted timid and fragile every time they interacted, she had genuinely believed the woman was completely innocent. In the whole ordeal, if Carter had to bear 70% of the responsibility, then Sarah had to bear at least 20%. As for the remaining 10%, Chloe was more than willing to take the blame for it. After all, she was the one who had ditched him at the altar. Seeing her sudden look of realization, Julian waved a hand in front of her eyes. "You're already married to me. Why do you still care so much about your ex-boyfriend's business? Don't tell me you still have lingering feelings for him." For some reason, Chloe detected a slight hint of sour jealousy in his words. However, she quickly dismissed the thought. Their marriage was merely a transaction. Having been married for less than 24 hours, he probably didn't have any feelings for her. How could he be jealous? As she thought about this, she explained, "No, it's not that. I was just thinking that if Sarah is putting on an act, then her acting skills are truly not bad. She even managed to fool me. If it wasn't an act, then I can only say that God has eyes, allowing me to see Carter's true colors before jumping into the fiery pit. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened in the future. If marrying him is jumping into a fiery pit, then what is marrying me?" Julian asked. "What was it?" She looked up at him for a long time before daring to draw a conclusion. "Didn't Grandma say it? Eliminating evil and doing away with the wicked." Hearing these words come out of her mouth made Julian unhappy. He counted on his fingers one by one to prove his point. "I am only 1 year older than you. I'm currently the head of the Sterling Group, which can be considered young and promising, right? I'm handsome, and anyone in our circle with a daughter has their eyes on me as a son-in-law. I'm quite a hot commodity in the marriage market, aren't I? With such outstanding qualifications, I've also kept my nose clean for over 20 years without a single scandal. Plus, I'm humorous and witty. Are you still not satisfied?" Amused by his serious demeanor, Chloe also started counting on her fingers to match him. "You are the head of a corporation, busy with work every day, and I have to fly all over the world. So after getting married, we'll definitely rarely see each other. You're handsome, so everyone is eyeing you, which means I'll have enemies on all sides, right? I'd have to worry every day. You don't have any scandals, but rumor has it that you stay away from women. Did I just bring you home to be a decoration?" "Are you afraid I married you just to keep you as a decoration?" he teased back. "It's only our first day of marriage. Are you already falling for me?" The atmosphere suddenly became a bit ambiguous. Chloe felt somewhat unnatural and turned her head away. "Grandma was absolutely right. Taming you is truly a massive sacrifice." "Young master, madam," the butler suddenly interrupted. "Old madam has invited Mr. and Mrs. Evans over. Please head back quickly." That single sentence made Chloe's eyes widen. She looked at him in silence, her gaze silently asking him what was going on. Julian pushed her toward the living room, his voice brimming with laughter. "I've already married you. For such an important matter, of course I have to report to my parents-in-law. How about it? Isn't this son-in-law thoughtful?" Meanwhile, after fainting at the wedding, the Carter family had someone rush Sarah to the hospital. Due to extreme distress, she showed signs of a miscarriage. Fortunately, thanks to timely emergency treatment, there were no major complications. That evening, when old Mrs. Carter arrived with an extravagant dinner, Sarah only ate a few meager bites and was immediately given a severe scolding. "Sarah, you are pregnant, yet you only eat this much. How will the baby get enough nutrition?" Hearing this reproachful tone, a wave of panic surged in Sarah's heart. Although she had no appetite, she quickly picked up her chopsticks again. Only then did old Mrs. Carter nod. She picked up the medical record next to her to read, but her eyebrows furrowed even tighter. Looking at her expression, Sarah began to feel incredibly anxious. Although this powerful and influential woman always treated her amiably, Sarah knew it was solely because of the baby in her womb. After understanding the basic situation, old Mrs. Carter began to lecture her. Perhaps affected by the events of the day, the old woman's tone was far from gentle, and her words were somewhat harsh. Sarah was already terrified of her. Being lectured like this brought tears welling up in her eyes. So when she saw Carter push the door open and walk in, it was as if she had seen her savior. She looked at him with eyes brimming with hope. However, the moment she saw him, with his haggard, despair-filled face, she immediately froze. Having known him for so long, this was the first time Sarah had ever seen him in such a devastated state. "Mr. Carter, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" she asked. Faced with her concern, Carter remained completely unmoved. He took large strides to the side of the bed, his eyes fixed unwaveringly on her stomach. "I want to abort this baby." The moment these words were spoken, both women were shocked. Sarah's face was filled with utter disbelief, while old Mrs. Carter grew incredibly furious. She blocked his path. "As long as I live for even one more day, don't even think about it. This is the flesh and blood of the Carter family." The grandmother and grandson refused to give an inch, the tension in the room so thick it felt ready to explode. Carter clenched his fists, a crazed look rising in his eyes. "This is my child. You have no right to interfere with my choice." I have no right, old Mrs. Carter retorted. Sarah has this right. The baby is in her belly. She is the mother. The decision to keep it or abort it should rest in her hands. That single sentence shifted the fire over to Sarah, who was trembling. Under the pressure of their gazes, she lowered her head, her fingers tightly gripping the fabric of her dress. She knew perfectly well that this baby was one of her few chances to stay by Carter's side. Because of that, she couldn't afford to lose it. Yet, the choice of whether to keep it or not wasn't hers to make. Still holding on to a sliver of false hope, Sarah gathered all her courage to look up at him. A reason, Mr. Carter. I want a reason to get rid of the baby. Old Mrs. Carter originally thought Sarah would stand on her side. Seeing her suddenly ask such a question, she shot her a cold glare. No reason is acceptable. I am determined to keep this child. Carter knew that when it came to this baby, his grandmother possessed an unusual stubbornness. However, his mind was entirely made up. The child and Chloe simply could not coexist. I want Chloe, so I'm sorry. Hearing this and recalling the events from that afternoon, old Mrs. Carter only felt a bitter disappointment, immediately bursting into a harsh scolding. Sarah felt as if she had been plunged into an ice cellar, the blood in her limbs freezing over. An ashen pallor washed over her face. Meanwhile, the argument between the grandmother and grandson grew increasingly fierce. Their shouting practically threatened to blow the roof off, neither able to persuade the other. Losing his patience entirely, Carter called the doctor straight in and began asking about procedures related to abortion. His actions infuriated old Mrs. Carter to the point where she collapsed, fainting on the spot. The hospital room was instantly thrown into chaos. Yet Sarah remained like a person who had lost her soul, completely oblivious to the commotion as she stared out the window with vacant eyes. She wasn't surprised that Carter had made this decision. She had even anticipated it. But when it was actually happening, it was still hard for her to accept. So when old Mrs. Carter regained consciousness and told her that the baby could be kept, she broke down into agonizing sobs. His attempts to resist proving futile, Carter's mind was a complete mess. Her crying only added fuel to the raging fire in his heart. He slammed the door and stormed out. On the other side of town, a late-night phone call shattered Chloe's sweet dreams. Too exhausted to even open her eyes, she reached a hand out, fumbling around the nightstand. Out of habit, she pressed the answer button. Chloe, where are you? Why haven't you come home yet? Do you not want me anymore? In her groggy state, Chloe couldn't clearly make out what he was saying at all. On the contrary, Julian, who was sleeping right beside her, heard it perfectly clearly. Seeing that she was still half asleep, he gently took the phone from her hand and stepped out onto the balcony. Mr. Carter, just how much have you had to drink? Why are you calling my wife's phone? Shouldn't you be contacting Miss Sarah? Hearing Julian's voice, Carter instantly sobered up by more than half. What right do you have to answer Chloe's phone without permission? On the basis that I'm the one sharing her bed, Julian replied smoothly. On the contrary, Mr. Carter, disturbing my wife and me during our sweet slumber in the middle of the night is a bit inappropriate, don't you think? That single sentence made Carter so furious that he hung up the phone. Hearing the dial tone in his ear, Julian smiled. He opened her contacts and changed Carter to Mr. Carter. Then, he scrolled up, found his own name, and changed Julian to husband. After changing all the names across her social media apps, he finally turned off the phone with satisfaction and returned to the bedroom. Chloe was still fast asleep. He placed the phone down on the bed, reached out to pull her into his arms, and only then did he close his eyes. By noon the next day, Chloe had slept for over 10 hours. Just as she woke up, she received a message from Vivian. Carter drove drunk last night and got into a car accident. He's a bit injured. Did you know? Chloe, of course, didn't know, but she vaguely remembered receiving a phone call the previous night. She immediately picked up her phone to check. The call log showed a 3-minute conversation, but she had absolutely no memory of it. Could this have been a call for help after he got into the accident? If that was the case, wasn't she being a bit too unkind? Thinking this, a hint of guilt welled up in her heart. She quickly washed her face and hurried downstairs. Julian, who had woken up early, was busy puttering around in the kitchen. As soon as he saw her come down, he walked over to her side and asked what she wanted to eat. She hesitated for a moment but still decided to ask him. There was a phone call last night. Do you remember anything about it? Hearing this, the smile full of amusement on Julian's face stiffened. I remember. I was the one who answered it. Chloe's heart skipped a beat, and she hurriedly asked what he had said. Seeing her anxious demeanor, Julian pulled a long face, a hint of sour jealousy in his voice. If you care about him so much, then my crashing the wedding was completely unnecessary. Chloe didn't know why he was making sarcastic remarks about this call, but she still patiently explained. Someone just told me he got into a car accident yesterday. I was worried that last night's call was him asking for help. I felt a bit guilty, which is why I asked. So it was just her compassion acting up. Only then did Julian's expression return to normal. He called yesterday because he was drunk and wanted to bother you. I scolded him a few times, and he hung up. The accident apparently happened around 5 or 6 in the morning. It has nothing to do with us. The guilt in Chloe's heart finally dissipated. She sat down with peace of mind and prepared to eat breakfast. Seeing her calm face, Julian couldn't help but ask a probing question. Do you want to go to the hospital to visit him? I heard his injuries aren't light. Unless he's dead, I'm not going, she replied. Hearing that, the corners of Julian's mouth curled back up into a smile. Chloe reached out to grab the coffee cup next to her. Tilting her head, she saw him hiding to the side, secretly laughing. She couldn't help but feel a bit curious. He got into an accident, and you're this happy? Julian mimicked her tone. Unless he's dead, why wouldn't I be happy? Carter was in the hospital for half a month, yet Chloe didn't send a single message to check on him. He stared at the hundreds of messages he had sent, to which the other party hadn't given any response. He was on the verge of a complete breakdown. Sarah, standing nearby holding a bowl of porridge she wanted to give him, didn't dare to speak up. Ever since that wedding, Carter's attitude toward her had reverted to his initial indifference. No matter what she said to him or what topics she actively tried to bring up, he completely ignored her. He was immersed in his own world, growing increasingly depressed and despondent day by day. Old Mrs. Carter initially came to painstakingly offer a few words of advice, but after being given the cold shoulder a few times, she couldn't even be bothered to come anymore. As for the company's secretaries and assistants, having received orders to take a leave of absence, they didn't come to the hospital either. Therefore, aside from the doctors and nurses, Sarah was the only one frequently coming in and out of this hospital room to take care of his daily needs. Under the influence of the prolonged freezing atmosphere in the room, her mood also felt as if it were covered by a dark storm cloud, gloomy and depressed. When Carter's birthday arrived, old Mrs. Carter didn't come in person, but had someone deliver a birthday cake. As Sarah wheeled the cake into the room, her heart was filled with restless anxiety. Carter, who had remained silent for over 10 days, looked up, saw the cake, and finally opened his mouth. Who sent it? Old madam, she answered softly. The glimmer of hope that had just sparked in Carter's heart was instantly extinguished. Throw it away. I don't want to see it. Sarah didn't understand why the relationship between the grandmother and grandson had deteriorated to this point. However, she was deeply indebted to the old madam. So at this moment, she couldn't help but speak up in her defense, but Carter wouldn't hear a word of it. Growing increasingly hysterical, he grabbed a glass cup and threw it, sending the cake crashing to the floor. It scraped past Sarah's leg as it shattered. Startled by the sudden commotion, she barely managed to grab onto the table to keep from falling. Carter's face, however, showed not a single trace of guilt or heartache. In a deep, cold voice, he told her to get out. Sarah's long-suppressed emotions finally could no longer be contained and erupted at that very moment. Crying, she walked over to him. If you want to blame someone, just blame me. Please don't be mad at the old madam, okay? She is old, her health is poor, and she can't handle the shock. In the past, the moment Carter saw her cry, he would feel a pang of sympathy and couldn't bear it. But now, even as she cried a river of tears, he had no reaction whatsoever. He merely looked at her coldly. Do you think that with her backing you, you can rely on this child to marry into the Carter family? He sneered. Let me tell you, stop your wishful thinking. In this life, other than Chloe, I will not marry anyone else. Every single word was sharper than the broken glass on the floor, slicing into Sarah's already bruised and battered heart. She kept shaking her head, crying so hard she could barely breathe. I just want to stay by your side. I've never thought about wanting a title or status. Carter didn't want to listen to her weeping here. He violently yanked out his IV drip and walked straight out of the hospital room. Worried about his health, Sarah hurriedly chased after him. The two of them arrived at the staircase, one after the other. She grabbed his arm, begging bitterly. Your health hasn't recovered yet. Can we please go back and rest? I'm begging you. Without a second thought, Carter roughly shook her hand off. Unable to keep her balance, Sarah fell straight down the stairs. She let out a piercing scream as she tumbled down, her face filled with absolute terror. She tried her best to protect her stomach, but a searing, agonizing pain shot out from her abdomen. She felt as if she was being torn apart. Only one thought remained in her mind. Save this baby. She reached her hand out, begging Carter on the stairs above for help, pleading with him to save their child. Seeing Sarah fall, a flicker of panic initially crossed Carter's face. Out of reflex, he hurried down a few steps, but when he heard her cry for help, he stopped dead in his tracks. The baby. The baby. If she miscarried right here, it meant he could completely sever ties with Sarah. His grandmother wouldn't be able to force him anymore, and the only obstacle between him and Chloe would be completely erased. Could he salvage his relationship with her then? The moment this thought sprang into his mind, it grew wildly like weeds. He looked down at Sarah, struggling in a pool of blood. A fleeting look of reluctance passed through his eyes, but he made absolutely no move to help her. Gradually, Sarah's struggles grew weaker and weaker. On her face, blood and tears mixed together, making her look both incredibly pitiful and terrifying. His goal had been achieved. Logically, Carter's heart should have been filled with immense joy, but for some unknown reason, seeing her in this state brought a dull, aching pain to his chest. However, this pain was very faint and fleeting, not even coming close to the despair that Chloe's running away had brought him. Thus he stood there, watching in silence. Before she completely lost consciousness, he told her, "The baby is gone. The agreement is also terminated, but I will give you double the compensation. Promise me you will never appear in New York again in this lifetime. Don't appear in front of me and Chloe." After going down to the first floor, Carter finally called the doctor, telling him Sarah's location. Then he hung up, hailed a cab by the road, and gave the address of the Sterling family estate. When the car stopped in front of the villa, the doctor called back, informing him that the baby couldn't be saved. With a complex state of mind, he opened the car door. The doors of the villa happened to open at that exact moment. Julian, sitting in a wheelchair, was whining to Chloe from behind about how much his ankle hurt. Hearing this, she frowned and turned around, intending to ask the young master what trouble he had caused this time. Just then, she saw the person standing by the door. Not having seen him for over half a month, Carter had lost so much weight that he was nothing but skin and bones. His eye sockets were deeply sunken, and he was still wearing his hospital gown, looking exhausted and frail. Meeting her gaze, he immediately stepped forward. "Chloe, can we talk?" Before she could even speak, Julian in the wheelchair yelled out first, "If we don't get to the hospital, your husband's leg will be crippled." He gritted his teeth, heavily emphasizing the words, "your husband," while his hands protectively pulled the person next to him closer. A car horn honked from behind. Chloe looked down at his sprained ankle, then finally looked up at Carter, her tone incredibly indifferent. "Sorry, I have to take him to the hospital. Let's do this another time." Hearing this, Julian's expression finally improved a bit, but he kept muttering incessantly. "What do you mean him? It's clearly husband. Your husband sprained his ankle saving you, and you didn't even call him husband once. It really breaks your husband's heart." Complaining left and right, he wouldn't stop, to the point that she couldn't help but give him a pinch. Watching the two of them teasing each other, Carter felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over him, chilling him to the bone. The driver brought the car out and came over to help Julian into the vehicle. Seeing that they were about to leave, Carter couldn't hold back anymore. He grabbed Chloe's left hand, his tone pleading. "Chloe, I just need 5 minutes. Can you talk to me?" The moment he reached out, Julian, who had just sat down, lunged forward. Leaning half his body out of the car, he tightly gripped Carter's arm, his voice fierce and cold. "Let go. On what grounds are you ordering me around?" Carter shot back. "On the grounds that you're pulling my wife's hand. Let go." Seeing the two of them fighting again, Chloe only felt a headache coming on. She raised her right hand and covered Julian's mouth. "All right. That's enough," she said, her voice carrying a hint of impatience. Only then did the two men fall silent. She shook off Carter's hand, then pushed Julian back into his seat, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Sit right here for 5 minutes. Don't speak and don't move." Looking at her stern expression, Julian didn't dare to utter a single word of protest. He blinked continuously to signal that he understood. Only then did she let him go. As soon as she closed the car door and walked about 10 meters away, Carter hurriedly followed. "What is it?" "Speak," she said. "Sarah and I are completely over. The baby has been miscarried. From now on, she will never appear in front of us again," he blurted out. "Chloe, you know that I only have you in my heart. Can you give me one more chance?" Hearing this news, a flash of surprise crossed her eyes. What happened? How did she lose the baby? "In my heart, you are irreplaceable. I know you minded this child. That's why I let it disappear," he replied. "Chloe, anything you don't like, I can make it disappear. Will you forgive me?" As he spoke these words in an endless stream of agitation, it was as if he had done some good deed and was begging for praise. Looking at his nearly maddened state, Chloe's heart filled with shock. She couldn't help but take 2 steps back. That is your own flesh and blood. How could you be so heartless? Sarah loves you so much. Why would she agree to abort this baby? Catching the fleeting look of fear on her face, Carter was terrified she would misunderstand and hastily explained. No, it wasn't the baby. I wasn't the one who killed it. She fell down the stairs on her own and miscarried. Chloe, this was just an accident. It had nothing to do with me. As Carter said these words, his entire body was so tense that his facial muscles twitched, and his eyes kept darting away evasively. Her intuition told her that this matter was not that simple. Julian's displeased call rang out from behind, reminding her that time was almost up. She had no choice but to keep it brief. When did the miscarriage happen? She has no family, so why aren't you staying by her side? Carter stared at her intently. His mind was entirely consumed with the idea of getting back together, yet his mouth answered her question. An hour ago, I called people to save her and gave her a lot of money. She will be fine. I just wanted to get here as quickly as possible to tell you the news. Chloe, now that all the obstacles have been cleared, can we go back to the way things were? Can we pretend nothing ever happened? She hadn't expected him to say such things. That was a living, breathing life. Was it merely an obstacle in his eyes? The face right in front of her clearly hadn't changed from before, yet she felt he was entirely like a stranger. We can't go back, she said. Let's just end it here. Don't come looking for me anymore. I'm already married, and I have to start a new life. These words were like a knife stabbing straight into Carter's heart. Why? Why? It should have ended a long time ago, she replied. The night I flew to Italy, it should have been over. I told you I'm a neat freak when it comes to relationships. Carter, this is the end. When she returned to the car, Julian's face was as cold as ice. He waved his watch in front of her eyes, complaining indignantly. 7 minutes. You're 2 minutes over the time limit. Seeing him calculate things so pettily, she rubbed her forehead and coaxed him like a child. 2 minutes. I promised you 2 requests, okay? Having achieved his goal, Julian's expression instantly returned to normal. He took her hand into his palm. All right then, the first request, you must tell me everything you 2 talked about. She could only patiently recount the entire conversation, and only then did Julian finally let go of his anger. After arriving at the hospital and accompanying him for a checkup, the doctor said it was nothing serious, and that he just needed some acupuncture at a traditional medicine clinic. Chloe then pushed his wheelchair to a nearby clinic. Unable to stop thinking about Sarah's situation, she made an excuse to use the restroom. The moment she stepped out the door, she headed straight back to the hospital, making her way to Sarah's room. Opening the door, Chloe saw Sarah's face, which was as pale as a sheet of paper, and her vacant, lifeless eyes. A flurry of mixed emotions swelled in her heart. You are still young. Try not to grieve too much, and don't ruin your health, she advised softly. Crying, Sarah shook her head. Now that the baby is gone, he won't even look at me once. I have no other way. I can't let go of him. I know I'm not worthy of him, and I know he only has you in his heart. But I love him just as much as he loves you. I can't help myself. I didn't want much. I just wanted to stay by his side a little longer, even if it was just because of the baby. But the baby is gone, and I've lost everything. Having had it and then losing it is 1,000 times crueler than wishing for it and never getting it. On her way upstairs, Chloe had wondered if she should persuade Sarah to give up on Carter. After all, the words he had just spoken were so coldly ruthless. He was truly not a good man to entrust one's entire life to. But now, hearing her weep and pour out her heart, Chloe felt that saying anything at this moment would be inappropriate. The only thing she could do was sit quietly by her side and act as a loyal listener. Time eventually settled the scores, delivering a definitive end to a love story ruined by deceit. Sarah took the compensation and left New York for good, finally awakened by the tragic loss of her child and Carter's chilling apathy. In a quiet, distant town, she quietly rebuilt her life far away from the toxic elite. Carter paid the ultimate price for his infidelity. Trapped in a prison of his own making, he turned to alcohol as his family's business empire crumbled under his reckless, grief-stricken decisions. Following his grandmother's sudden passing, he was left entirely alone in an empty mansion, clutching a ruined wedding photo and drowning in permanent regret. Meanwhile, Chloe's life blossomed. Free from her past, her dance career reached dazzling new heights on the international stage. Julian kept every promise he ever made, remaining her fiercely loyal husband, protector, and biggest fan. Standing under the bright spotlights after a sold-out performance, Chloe looked out into the front row to see Julian holding a massive bouquet of roses with his familiar, teasing smirk. As she smiled back, she knew that walking away from that altar wasn't just revenge, it was the best decision of her life. The end.
When trust is shattered by betrayal, cutting ties with absolute clarity is the best way to reclaim your own life. A relationship lacks meaning without respect and fidelity. Therefore, no excuse for cheating deserves to be tolerated. Walking away from someone who doesn't value you is exactly how you open the door to a truer happiness. What do you think about her choice? Let me know in the comments, hit like, and subscribe Tiny Diary IT. See you next time!